Welcome, Dr. Marty. You're working right now on a multiple volume work on religious fundamentalism.
We're spending 6 years producing 6 volumes on fundamentalisms around the world.
What are those volumes? What part of the study?
The very first one simply looked at 14 different fundamentalisms, from U.S. Protestant to Dakwah in Malaysia to Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood or whatever. Then we spent 2 volumes on the world that fundamentalists make. The worldview, the intimate part of life. All fundamentalisms care a lot about gender, sexuality, family.
I was going to ask you, did you find any commonalities?
What are the commonalities? Let me just mention a couple of surprises first, or things that we may not have noticed had we not compared. And then I could say a few things that we went looking for and found, if in different forms. For example, we weren't looking for, though we should have known, all fundamentalisms are very patriarchal. Usually there is a God. There are a few fundamentalisms in religions that don't have a God, but usually there is a God, and the God is very male, very authoritarian, who governs the earth through authoritative political systems.
There's no matriarchal fundamentalism?
No, there might become some someday, but there aren't yet. The goddess was a little too obscure in leaving her traces. No, the ancient books on which modern fundamentalisms draw tend to have this, but they exaggerate them. That is, biblical literature and so on has a soft side, it has a feminine side, it has all these other sides. Fundamentalisms like authority, and they like a deity that asserts that authority. And the family is governed similarly. I have a colleague who wrote a book on the, to me, puzzling thing, why are more women members of these movements around the world, even though, to the degree the movement is successful, women are more subjugated. That's something we hadn't thought about until we found that it's true in all the religions. Second, again, something we might have thought of but didn't until we did the comparing, is that fundamentalism is a reaction to the modern world. They're reactive against modernity. If there's anything that the people on the street would say is modern, it's mass media of communication. Every fundamentalism likes mass media. It's the one thing about the modern world they really like.
They reject most of modernity, but not
the most technical feature, the electronic revolution. They don't like most of what's communicated on the media. Indeed, that may be part of what motivates their reaction. But they all use them well.
An attempt at gaining a wider voice, then, a sense of power.
Very much a search for power. That may be the third surprise. Until 15, 20, 30 years ago, everyone who studied them, I included, usually saw them as relatively passive forces in the world. If I could compare, it would be like the Amish are very conservative, but they're never going to hand you a tract at an airport. They're never going to try to pass legislation. Can't even get them to court. They are extremely traditional, and they are not fundamentalist. And they aren't called that by their enemies, their friends, their scholars. Most Orthodox Judaism, outside of a movement or two in Israel, is obviously Orthodox. It's in the name. But again, the Orthodox Jew just wants to be left alone.
That brings up the question, how do you define fundamentalism? What are the criteria of your study?
I started rather naively. They asked me to do this study. I didn't go looking for it, so I not only could act naive, I was naive. And I just asked, why in the 20th century did we need a new word? You will not find the word fundamentalism before the 20th century in any language I know of. It was invented, used first in a July issue of a 1920 Baptist magazine, the Watchman Examiner, in the middle of a Baptist church fight, when the editor said, everybody wants to be called conservative nowadays. Moderates are conservatives, but they aren't willing to do battle for the Lord. Those who want to do battle for the Lord will call ourselves fundamentalist. The word was in the air, but he pushed it that way, and soon there were organizations of fundamentalists. So I asked myself, why, if you already have the word conservative, I've used it, traditional, orthodox, why a new word? And I think that the common feature was fundamentalisms are conservatisms, traditionalisms, that feel so challenged by modernity that if they don't react, they'll be overwhelmed.